What is up, everyone? Welcome to episode 5 of the Shea podcast. I am Lou. That is Vin. We would like to welcome a very special guest this evening, former Mets pitcher and SNY analyst, Nelson Figueroa. Welcome to episode 5 of the Shea podcast. We are joined by a very special guest this evening, former Mets pitcher and SNY analyst, Nelson Figueroa. Nelson, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Awesome, man. Really appreciate you hopping on with us.
No worries.
So we just wanted to quickly introduce ourselves. My name is Lou. This is Vinny right here. We are both from Staten Island, New York. We're both big Met fans. And like I said, we just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on. We won't take too much of your time this afternoon. We know you are very busy. But just a couple of questions on, one, your past and your history in baseball, and then just your outtake on the Mets so far this year. So, Vin, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, one thing that I find really, really cool about what you were able to do, Nelson, is being from Brooklyn and being able to play for the Mets. And I really hope I'm pronouncing the college right. Is it Brandeis or Brandeis?
Brandeis.
Okay, you're the only alum to ever make it to the majors from that school.
Yeah, no. So first off, thank you. Yeah, it's an incredible journey. The improbability, it marvels me to this day. Every time I go back to the old neighborhood, go to see mom and dad in Brooklyn and pass by Lincoln High School where it all started. Yeah, just, I was a kid in the schoolyard drawing a box on the wall and pretending I was John Franco growing up, wanted to follow in his footsteps, being a Brooklyn boy, being able to play at the major league level, and then, of course, playing for the Mets. I think one of the best things is, when I got drafted, I was negotiating my contract, which a 30th round draft pick from a Division III school doesn't have much leverage. So the bottom line was this: my mom made me, asked the guy to hold on. Paul Beretta was the scout's name. Asked him to hold on, and my mom said to me, "What have you always said you wanted to be?" I said, "I'm a major league ball player." She said, "And who's giving you the opportunity to do that?" I said, "The New York Mets." She goes, "Why would you say no? Why would you argue? Why would you fight for something that you're not going to be able to get and be upset about it? Let's look at this as an opportunity. And then once you get your foot in the door, everything else will figure itself out." So I was very blessed to have that opportunity to play for my childhood dream of a team. And it took me 13 years, until I was able to actually put on that Met uniform at Shea Stadium. But I can tell you, it was well worth the ride all the way through.
That's awesome. At what point did you say to yourself, being a professional baseball player is a legit, because like you said, every kid has that dream and very few can make it. And you were very lucky to do so. So at what point did you say to yourself, this is legit for me?
Well, I actually, from someone like myself, it was never a comfortability to say I'm a major league ball player now. It was always, I've got to continue to work, continue to be successful, continue to, find ways to get people out on a daily basis to prove that I belonged at the major league level. So the trials and tribulations, one of my greatest attributes was my resilience and my ability to bounce back after being sent down. If I only got a cup of coffee that first season and pitched 3 games in the big leagues, that could have still said I made it to the major leagues. But it was the fact that I got sent down, continued to work hard, got called back up. So I got sent down, 11 times and was able to get back up. So I think that's one of the biggest things is, how you deal with, the setback. How do you, overcome all the disappointment? How do you overcome? Because a lot of it is things that you can't control. And I think as I got older and those things were happening to me, it really made me realize control what you can control. Wherever you're at, make the most of it. You don't have, there are guys that have major league talent. Anyone who's gotten drafted has major league talent. Otherwise, they wouldn't have even been drafted. Now, what do you do when you're around other guys with major league talent? When that pool is all of a sudden very, very narrowed, for all the kids who played college baseball to all the kids who, played in the Cape Cod League, like I did. And then all of a sudden your name's on the map and you're on that short list. And now it's going out there and proving that you can get those guys out, not just, for the season, but, for a career. And I think that was one of the things that I was very proud of, that, I went up as a starter, wound up becoming a reliever. And I think I, eventually flourished in that role as a reliever, knowing that I could always start. And that was always my goal, to have 30 starts in a season. It never happened, but that would be the one regret. But I do think that, for the most part, it was a career just of perseverance, showing that when given the opportunity, that I could rise to the occasion. And, I've gotten out a lot of my childhood idols. Is the kind of things that, will get you a free beer at a bar because it's a great story. But at the same time, it's you look back at it, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. I got to play all over the world for 19 years as a professional baseball player, a lot longer than your average 30th round draft pick gets to play.
Right. So you mentioned that you got to pitch at Shea when you put the Mets jersey on finally. You also got to pitch at Citi Field.
Yes.
So which one would you prefer to pitch at? Is there a big difference? Or I know pitching at the major league level has to just be unbelievable, but is there a preference to you?
Well, I mean, I grew up watching from the upper deck, watching guys like Dwight Gooden, Ron Darling, Sid Fernandez, Bobby Ojeda. I grew up watching those guys, David Cohn. And so when I got a chance to actually step on the same field, same clubhouse, be on that mound wearing that uniform in the last year of Shea Stadium, it was really, really special to me. For 13 years, it was crazy just to think, you get drafted in 2000. I got drafted in 1995, and then all of a sudden it takes till 2008 before I'm able to make my debut as a Met. But I think Shea was, as they say, it was a dump, but it was our dump.
Exactly.
It was just different. It was loud. It was obnoxiously loud, and the fans knew it. They wanted to be a part of it. They were a part of the atmosphere like no other place. I think that was one of the things that made it really, really special to pitch at Shea Stadium. And there's a lot of guys who played against the Mets during those Shea years. I mean, look at Chipper Jones. He named his son Shea. I mean, that tells you the kind of respect he had for a place like that. So that was really cool. And then to get a chance to, of course, then very next season pitch in 2009, and I was able to pitch the first complete game shutout at Citi Field. So to make some history along the way and have my name, just for somewhere for all eternity as the first guy to do it. Very, very cool. And I just think, it's a great place. It's just unbelievable the way that they built it, designed for the fans. There's not a bad seat no matter where you're sitting. There's so much to do at the ballpark. There's so many, the foods are incredible. I think it's everything you would want as a fan, because you can go there, and if you're a diehard, man, you just focus on the ball game because you're going to have a great seat. If you're, someone who's got there with some kids and you want to go around and do some things, you have all the opportunity to do that as well. And I think, Steve Cohen, being a former Just fan, really put together as a class act and a great product for the fans as we move into the new regime here with Steve Cohen and his wife.
One thing that you mentioned, and I think it's very interesting, just your story and your journey through baseball over the years. You mentioned the trials and tribulations of being a Major League Baseball player, the ups and downs, the minor league trips back and forth. Is there a relationship, or is there a connection to your time playing high school baseball in Brooklyn that you learned some of those lessons in? New York City baseball isn't like baseball around the country. We deal with climate changes, with the seasons, and other states get to play year round.
Right.
Coming from a huge high school like Lincoln, being one of the most well-known high schools in Brooklyn. Did you learn lessons while you were young and in high school that really helped you throughout your minor league career about the grind of baseball?
Oh, without a doubt. I think when you're a kid coming into high school at about 5'10", 125 pounds and one eyebrow, and you're playing with a team who just went to the city championship in Yankee Stadium the year before, you kind of go there with the attitude of listen and learn. But I was very fortunate that in my sophomore year, I didn't have a freshman year because I went to Mark Twain. So going in as a 10th grader, going to try out for the team, I knew Joe Malone from our time. I actually played in Japan with the New York City Friendship Team. And they took 16 kids. They had 600 tryout. They took 16 of us to Japan and China for 3 weeks to play. And Joe Malone and Bobby Napo from Canarsie were the two coaches that took us there. And I was always on Lincoln's radar, and he knew where I lived. And so Malone always kept tabs on me and how I was doing. And then, of course, to get there and try out, and I became the starting shortstop in my sophomore year, and we wound up going to the city championship. And then we get to the city championship game, and they kind of gave me hey, you know what? It's going to make us better today. Can you play left field? And I said, damn right. If you think I'm playing left out, you're out of your mind. So I moved to left field for the game at Yankee Stadium. It was a whole new perspective of baseball, and to do it on a major league field, of course, was incredible. We wound up winning the city championship. And so I wasn't, it wasn't a situation where, oh my God, he goes on to make the major leagues. He was the best player at every level, or the best player even in high school. I had a freshman who was DHing for me, and because he could hit very very well, and I was really good with the glove. I was fast. I could do a lot of little things, and then we get to the playoffs, and I got a chance to hit, and it was again one of those life lessons was be ready for when your name's called. The opportunity, maybe the window of opportunity may be small, but you've got to be ready for it. And in my mind, I played out every single at bat, what I would do, how I would do it. They gave me a suicide squeeze in one of my first at bats against one of the best pitchers in New York in the playoffs, and I was able to get down the suicide squeeze. So it was the little things like that I always prepared for, that when the opportunity came. And I think one of the coaches that I had used to always tell me that luck isn't luck. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And so that was kind of the ground level of my mental state of everything was, I'm going to be ready. I learned how to throw a forkball split finger from Mike Scott in a book, because Mike Scott's, split finger used to drive the Mets crazy. And I'm like, man, that's a pitch that I would love to learn how to throw. So I learned how to throw it in high school because of that. Even when I got out of just even being seen by some scouts, and of course I wasn't the optimum size. I didn't throw 95 miles an hour. I'm from the era of Frankie Rodriguez, Manny Ramirez, Steve Carsey, who was the other one? Koch. These guys were throwing 95 to 98 in high school back with the old radar guns. And they were fantastic athletes. So I think it was really kind of eye-opening as I started to climb the ranks and, did well for myself, that, you see your name alongside of them in newspapers and the all-city teams and things like that. And then it was just always, what's next? What can I do next? What do I have to learn how to do next? So by going to Brandeis, it's a Division III baseball program, but it had a former major leaguer as a head coach. He was a former major league catcher. He caught Goose Gossage in the big leagues. Wow. He played for the White Sox. And so Pete Varney was that guy that I needed. Talked me out of wanting to play every day and, playing, every position and just being on the field. He said, you're going to focus on pitching. He's like, I believe you have it. And I said, I have no idea what the hell it is, but I was like, I came here because I have an opportunity to play, and I would love to try and be better than your starting, other 8 players. I want to play every day. And he was like, in the fall, he let me play a little bit. And then he was like, did you get it out of your system? Good. You're going to now train this whole off season to be a pitcher. And we're going to really try and focus on how we can make you the best that you can possibly be. Cause I was touching 90, 91 with that frame of like 5'10" and a 5'11", maybe, and 135 pounds. And so he was like, if we can, harness this ability, get you a little bigger, a little stronger, who knows, sky's the limit. And so for a Division III kid, it was great. I was given the opportunity to play right away, pitch right away, and learn a lot. And I think I always did that. I never thought I was above anybody else. I really felt like anybody with any upperclassman experience knew more than I did, learned more than I did, has seen more baseball than I have. And I would, take every little bit of knowledge from the backup catcher, from, an outfielder who maybe saw me tipping a pitch. And it was always things like that helped me kind of, shape my game to be able to compete when I got to the Cape Cod League. And, most people would be overwhelmed. These are programs, Division I programs, the best of the Division I programs going to play together so that all the scouts can watch them. And I remember I was in the All-Star game, and there was about 70 scouts behind home plate with their radar guns and everything. And I went out there, and the coach, said, go knock him dead, kid. And he went to the water cooler to get a drink of water. And by the time he started getting back to the front of the dugout, I was already done with the inning. I had thrown 7 pitches, a strikeout, and got 3 outs. And he looked at me. It's like, what are you doing here? I was like, that was it. We're 3 outs. And he's like, oh, well, stay loose. You might have to go back out there. I don't know if the other guy's going to be ready in time. So I think that was one of the things where I got to that point and realized, it was, there was just a lot. Playing against U Service, Mel Zitter, one of the best coaches I ever had, because he just challenged you to another level, because he was used to seeing major league talent come through New York.
Right.
And everybody who knows U Service organization knows, how good those teams have always been. And then having the opportunity to play with those guys. And then I think our last year playing together, I won the Cape Cod League championship. Then I went back to play in a final hurrah tournament with U Service, and it was the AAABA, which is Johnstown, Pennsylvania, National Invitational Tournament. And all the good, great U Service teams that had been there before, to this day, we were the first team from Brooklyn in like 30 years to win it.
Oh wow.
And our summer league team had 9 guys get drafted off of it. We had no
Oh
idea. Like we thought we were we thought we were like the little brothers to the bigger guys, to the Manny Ramirez's, Trovin Valdez, Ulysses, all these great names that came up through youth service. And we're like, yeah, those guys are really good. And then all of a sudden we come out there and we got 9 guys, including, John Rodriguez, who played in the World Series with the St. Louis Cardinals. We had Julio Lugo, who had a very nice major league career.
Right.
May he rest in peace. We had Jose Nunez. We had all these guys that had an opportunity to go and play some big league baseball as well. And we look back at it now, 30 years later with smiles on our faces because apparently we were that good.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool.
That's
So
awesome.
You
That's
mentioned
awesome.
like your draft, moving up and climbing up the ranks. What was it like when your draft experience? Because like you said, the Mets did select you. What was it like when going through the whole draft experience and then finding out it was going to be the Mets?
Yeah, it was nerve-wracking. I can tell you that because, you hear a lot of different things. Back then, they're calling you and they're telling you, would you sign if we drafted you in the 3rd round? Would you sign if we drafted you? How much will it take to sign you? Those kinds of things. And, my answer was always the same. The sooner the better. And whatever the round gets, I'll take the average of whatever the round gets. I wasn't trying to get overpaid or sit out for money after they drafted me. Any team that drafted you believes in you. That's the way I felt. And so if you were taking a chance on me, then, I was going to do right by them and just, again, make the most of it, whatever it was. And I remember that it was funny. The New York Newsday had it after. So that first, it was 3 days the draft, right? So it was the first day I got phone calls. How soon, how much would it take? And I said, the same spiel. Nothing happened after the first day. That first night, I get phone calls. Hey, we're drafting early tomorrow. We're going to take you. And it was like 3 or 4 teams. Okay, no problem. Second day comes and goes, nothing. Second night, I get phone calls again. We're definitely taking you as soon as we come on the board, blah, 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 blah. All right, cool. Third day, I hear nothing after the draft is over. And I'm like, oh my God. It's like, I didn't get drafted. So I tell my mom, I say, well, I guess I'm going back to school and I'm going to smash all the records. That's my new goal, right? So I'm getting dressed and I'm getting ready to go to the movies with my uncle. And all of a sudden the phone rings and it's Paul Beretta from the Mets. And he says, hey, Nelson, I want to congratulate you. You're now, we've drafted you and you're going to be a New York Met. I was like, really? Like, wow, that's crazy because I didn't hear from you guys. And I'm like, all right, sounds cool. I was like, he goes, well, I'll be by tomorrow to sign the contract. And I'm like, well, Mr. Beretta, contract by definition means negotiations. And he's like, yeah, well, there's not a lot of leeway we have with these negotiations because, again, the 30th round pick. So I go to the movies the next morning. The next morning I go get the newspaper because in the newspaper it says, drafted from Brandeis University and Lincoln alumni is Nelson Figueroa. Well, Newsday had me as a 3rd round draft pick.
Oh,
Daily News had me as a 30th round draft pick. So when Beretta calls me the next day and he says, all right, Nelson, let's start talking some numbers. And I'm like, first off, was it the 3rd or the 30th? Because I'm looking at the New York Newsday and it says the 3rd. And he goes, no, I'm pretty sure it was the 30th. And he goes, let me verify, let me check. And he calls me back and he says, yes, indeed, it was the 30th. And I'm like, all right, no problem. I was like, let's figure this out. And we went back and forth on numbers and his number never moved. And my number kept coming down. And I wound up signing for $2,500. As they say in Lotto, right? A dollar and a dream.
that's it.
So it was $2,500 and then a chance to go down to spring training and get some seasoning before the seasons opened up for the short season baseball. And I said, I have one condition. If you let me sign at Shea Stadium, I don't want to sign at home in the projects. I want to sign at Shea Stadium. They brought me in. I signed on the GM's desk. Jerry Honeysucker himself gave me his pen and told me I could keep it. So I signed at the desk, and then they sat us down in the scout seats behind home plate with Met hats on. And about the 6th inning, they put up on the Jumbotron that Lincoln High's own and Brandeis alumni Nelson Figueroa has just signed his contract and is headed to spring training tomorrow. And I got a standing ovation from the fans.
That's awesome.
Right there, I would have probably been, done. It would have been all worth it for that moment. And then to top that, of course, 2 days later, I head down to Florida. When I get to Florida, in my locker is my uniform, and I had Howard Johnson's jersey and Dwight Gooden's pants. Yeah, so I'm like, I call my dad, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if it gets any better than this. So But all's well that ends well. I was able to do a lot of really cool things with the Mets at the minor league level before I got traded. Put my name up on a lot of lists that kids got to look at that may have came from Brooklyn or New York, and they're like, "Oh, I know who that guy is." So I always looked at those lists and looked for inspiration. So hopefully, I inspired a kid or two to keep chasing his dream a year longer.
That's incredible.
That's a really cool draft story. That's awesome. And like you said, growing up in New York, obviously, Vinny and I idolizing the Mets. It's cool to see the other side of things, like a perspective from a player side. Coach, being a young kid in New York City, playing baseball your whole life, watching the Mets your whole life, and then getting that phone call from the organization itself. That's really, really cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was definitely it was kind of a surreal experience. It's one of those things that you dreamt of so many times that you didn't want to wake up. And so I had to make sure that it was real,
Yeah.
I think one of the coolest things is now, all these years later, like my relationship with the organization, I got to do so many things with them with SNY, and then of course, do fantasy camps alongside some of the guys that I grew up idolizing. So like now my Rolodex on my phone, I reach out to Howard Johnson, Mookie Wilson, Doc, Darryl, all these guys, on a regular basis. We just sit around talking baseball, whatever is going on with the Mets and stuff, and just trying to get together. See, we play some golf whenever guys are in town and things like that. So it's a very cool experience. I've been very blessed to be able to kind of, turn those dreams into reality, and I'm very thankful for it every day.
So Nelson, you once referred to your career as a winding road. The baseball has taken you all around the world, and it's really given you an experience that not a lot of other players have. You've been able to play in, you mentioned Japan, you played in Taiwan for a little bit. What was it like, and how do you compare playing baseball around the world to playing here in the major leagues? Is the game different in any way, and what was your experience like playing in those other countries?
Yeah, the game itself is 60 feet 6 inches, 90-foot bases. That always stays the same once you turn 13 and you start playing at the upper level. So those things don't change, right? So the dimensions of the field, the nuances of how the walls are built and everything like that's something that's individual to every stadium you ever play in. The game of baseball itself and the way to play winning baseball doesn't really change much. Throw strikes, get out, as few errors as possible, and score one more run than the other team. It's a simple formula, right? And so it's something that no matter what the language is, there's a language in baseball that is universal. And I've learned that through the years. That's exactly what I say about my career, that would I have liked to have a 20-year big league career with the New York Mets and only the New York Mets? Sure, but not even Tom Seaver could do that. So I look at my time with the Mets as very special and dear to me because it was my hometown team, my team that I rooted for since I was a kid. But I think also the ups and downs of being traded by them, being sent down by them and called back up and playing in the different places. And I think all of that kind of helped me to realize, like, I'm going to play this game as long as I can until they rip the jersey off of me. Because again, it's one of the coolest things in the world when you go through customs and you have to fill out the paperwork, and occupation is a baseball player. You got to see their faces. They're always like, really? Yeah, I get paid to play baseball. So being able to go to Taiwan, I had recovered from shoulder surgery. Still wasn't 100% that I felt like I was all the way back, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to go over to Taiwan for the experience. Maybe there's some training that they do that's different. Maybe the way that they throw pitches is different. I had played in Mexico in winter leagues, and guys threw breaking balls a little bit different. They were breaking ball masters in Mexico. It wasn't power pitching. It was how they could use their sliders, curveballs, changeups, cutters, all the little things. And of course, Taiwan and Asians are very well known for their fork balls, and I really mastered my fork ball over there.
That's great.
So that I could use it at the major league level. So everything that I did out there was kind of adding to my repertoire, adding to my experience. And then I got a chance to be a pitching coach while pitching out in Taiwan, which made it really cool because I got, even not having mastery of the language, like I said, it was easy to explain to these guys, hey, what they're doing, and have the translator with me. And I would tell them to interpret things exactly how I'm saying it. And sometimes it didn't translate, like there wasn't a translation for it. And you would get some like weird looks on their faces, but they got it when I used to say to them, it was funny. Like some of these kids, especially in Taiwan, it's a small island. And we know the success of the Taiwan Little Leaguers. They've dominated Little League baseball for decades. And so a lot of those guys grew up still staying on that island and playing because they didn't get a chance to play in the U.S. Double A player, triple A player to a guy who's played in the major leagues before. So I've always been of the ilk that anybody can play in the big leagues if they're given the opportunity. How well they play, how long they play, that's a different story. So it used to be like, you know, you had to have 500 innings as a pitcher in the minor leagues before you made it to the big leagues. So you had to experience every kind of scenario, ups and downs, you know, bases loaded, 2 outs in the 7th. Can you get out of it? There's things like that. And then, you know, you look at the game now and it's like, why are we wasting this kid's prime years when he's 21, 22, 23, and he can compete at the big league level? Let's let him learn at the big league level so that if he, you know, he stumbles a little bit, we're okay with it, but he'll come out better from it and he'll have the big league experience. You're seeing a lot of kids. Look at Soto. He became a free agent at 26.
Right.
You know, that was unheard of. You know, you used to make your debut at 25. And then at 30, 31, you would get, you know, a free agent contract. And now you're talking about guys, you know, trying to get a 4-year deal that they can't get 4-year deals if they're 31 years old anymore.
Yeah, look at
Pete Alonso included. So that tells you like the way the game has changed throughout the years. And I think playing baseball all over the world prepares you for things like that. You know, there's always a mentality to it. I know Mexico, I pitched in Mexico Summer League and I came out after like my 4th start and I pitched 8 innings and then the closer came in and gave up 4 runs and we lost. And I looked at the manager and I said, my only way to get back to the States and to get back to organized baseball is they need to know that I'm healthy. Like my stuff is good enough. But if they're still seeing that, oh, he hasn't pitched in 3 years because of shoulder surgery, they're going to think that I'm hurt if I don't pitch more innings. So this is what's happening. I'm never coming out of a game. And he was like, what do you mean? I go, is your closer better than me? He said, no. I said, are there relievers better than me? He goes, no. I go, so therefore, and of which, I'm never coming out of my game. Just expect me to go the whole game. And he's like, you're serious? I go, I'm dead serious. So the next 14 starts, I went 11 complete games out of the next 14 starts.
That's great.
And there was one game, no exaggeration. There was one game I had to be about 160 pitches deep through 8 innings, and I had given up 7 runs. 3 of them earned. There were errors because we had a huge lead. We're talking about like 13-2 in the 1st or 2nd inning, and then they started putting in all the rookies to play, and there was just, you know, error here, error there, a run score, whatever. And so I get to about 160 pitches, and I remember it, and I look at the manager, and he's just trying not to laugh because he knows I want to still go out complete game. But I had given up 20 hits, 20 hits on the board.
One game?
And yeah, and we're not talking about like rockets all over the place. We're talking about 20 hits where it's like a chopper here or this. And I'm like, I look at the board and I'm like, I've given up 20 hits and I'm winning. And I'm winning. Like, I'm going to win the game. It doesn't matter. And I remember coming out after the 8th inning and I take off my spikes. And he goes, what are you doing? He goes, you're going back out there for the 9th, right? And I go, there is no way. It might have been 19 hits I gave up because I said I'm not giving up 20 hits. That's exactly what it was. So I go, I'm not giving up 20 hits in a game. That's got to be ridiculous. It's got to be some kind of record. So I took my spikes and I threw them up on the stands for a fan to take them because I was like, I'm not going back out there. So yeah, those are the little things like you can do and you can learn from, you know, playing overseas that just aren't the same here in the States at the big league level.
That's crazy.
Awesome.
19 hits, 150 pitches, like Al Leiter territory.
Oh yeah, no, and that was something I did, you know, I would say regularly, but I could do it. Like I could get to that point and I had a game where I only gave up like 3 runs and not a lot of hits, but I threw 160 pitches, 150 something pitches in the Dominican League championships. And I did it because I said, if we win this game and don't have to use the bullpen, then we have everybody fresh for tomorrow.
Right.
And that's the game that we have to win. That's the game that's the most important game. And of course, we didn't win the next game. And then the next day after that, we're going to game 8 of a 9-game series. And I wound up coming in relief instead of, because I was like, I'm not going to pitch again because we're already in game 5. And here it was, game 8. And I was like, you know what? I'll warm up. And if you need me, I'll be in there. So I wound up pitching 3 innings of relief in that game. And I was the winning pitcher, slated to be the winning pitcher. We got to the 9th inning and Fernando Rodney gave up a home run to tie the game. And ESPN put the camera like right on me. And I took my towel and just covered my head because I was like, oh my God, I've got nothing left to give. I gave it all I had. But we thankfully won the walk-off at the bottom of the 9th inning. And it was one of the very cool experiences of my career, winning a championship and a walk-off. It was, you know, something that you always dream about, something that you always say in the backyard. Here we are. bases loaded, and it was first pitch. They brought in a lefty to face our lefty, Andy Dirks. First pitch, he hits a little ground ball back up the middle because they had the infield in for, to get the guy at home to keep him from winning. And ground ball just gets up the middle, and that was it. We were winners. So
That's
that was very
awesome.
cool.
You mentioned about being 24, 25, and at that age now. The one thing that me, Lou, and a bunch of guys that we have in our chat always talk about, Sproat. Kids like this. Sproat, I know you probably know them better than us. I know he moved up to AAA and he didn't really, the results weren't there as much as AA. But do you think he'll make it up this year? You got Sproat and Kranick, Tidwell. These kids are 24, 25. At what point does, I don't want to, not like a derogatory way, but do the gloves come off and say, let's see if they can really do it?
Yeah, that is, and sometimes it comes out of necessity more so than anything else, right? So you got a lot of injuries that happen, and you get a chance to see some people. That was one of the things about COVID, right? That was on the 40-man. It was like, all right, well, we got to see if they can play or not, and they put them right in the big league level. So there were guys that you would have maybe got like 2 or 3 years with the organization more as they climbed the ladder, where it was like, well, at the big league level, his stuff doesn't play. We thought it would, but it doesn't. And that guy's released the next year. So it works the same way, the other way. For a guy like Sproat, he's got plus stuff. And he was able to dominate in AA, of course. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that you start to get this confidence about you when you're playing at that level and you're dominating a few starts in a row, where you just feel like you're untouchable. You just feel like you can do whatever you want with the ball. You can make the ball move. You can throw the ball up in the zone, down in the zone, breaking balls. He has swing and miss stuff, obviously. And then all of a sudden you get to the next level. And I remember it well. I got to AAA, my first AAA start. I gave up 4 solo home runs. And I was like, whoa, like these are grown-ass men.
Right.
Like what just happened? I went from playing against kids that were my age to grown-ass men who were, just pissed off because they just got sent down from the big leagues or had been in the big leagues and they're rehabbing or whatever it may have been. And I'm like facing 4 guys in the lineup that were in the big leagues that same year or the year before. And I'm like, okay, this is different. So you take your lumps, and it's always about development, learning what you need to do, learning how to pitch backwards because you can't go fastball and fastball count no matter how hard you throw because the hitter is sitting fastball and fastball because they know what they're trying to do at those upper levels is they might get one pitch to hit and they're not going to miss it.
Right.
Whereas the kids in the lower levels are swinging at everything. So you can expand the zone. You can set them up, things of that nature. The more veteran type hitters, and with all the information that's out there, it's easier as you come up to AAA. And there's a lot of video on you, and there's a lot. We know the exact numbers of how your breaking ball breaks and how your fastball rides, and we know what to look for. Whereas when I was coming up, you had to face the guy to see exactly how his fastball was. I was one of those guys where my fastball was different, and it wasn't because of velocity. It was because of the way that it moved and the way that it spun. I hid the ball really well, and I was able to, pick up a few miles an hour of just visual velocity where they didn't pick up the ball right out of my hand. And I think those were some of the little keys and the tricks that I learned on the way up, which is, again, a kid like Sproat. And you remember this very well. Noah Syndergaard, who was a dominant. When it came to dominant stuff, he had dominant stuff. Yeah. And what did he say? My mechanics are terrible. And why? Because after the 3rd or 4th year, all of baseball figured out what he couldn't do. And he couldn't pitch inside on righties. Right. He was always down and away and off the plate. And his breaking ball, if your breaking ball has 14 inches of spin, so your slider has 14 inches of horizontal movement, then that means the plate is 17 inches wide. So if your slider starts middle of the plate, it's going off the plate. Everybody knows that. And they're laying off these nasty sliders, and everybody at home is going, how are they not swinging at that? Because they see it spinning, they see it's middle of the plate, and they know it's going to be a ball. And then all of a sudden, when he leaves it on the plate, it's getting hit. So you wonder why a guy like that is not even in baseball anymore, right? It's been a few years now since he's been in baseball. And it's not because he got old like me. I got old. That was the reason I couldn't play anymore. But it's just because these guys, they come up and they have the stuff, but there's always intangibles and things that you want to learn. And that's why you have these young kids together with these veterans. And you hope that Sproat's sitting down with guys that maybe he pitches similarly like, or guys that maybe, I'm looking for a guy that I throw like. I'm looking for a guy who I don't throw like, who's had success, and wonder why does this guy get away with throwing a 92-mile-an-hour fastball, right? Where I'm rearing back trying to throw 100. So I think those are the things from a kid like Sproat that you're hoping that he gains that while keeping his confidence, because you always want that. And I think you're going to see him out of necessity. Unfortunately, as we see what the game is like now, these guys are getting hurt.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
still 3 weeks of spring training. I think he's going to continue to pitch well and continue to keep his name on that short list. Will he break with the camp? They don't want him to. I know that. They don't want him to. I mean, they've got a lot of other guys that are in front of him. But, I mean, it comes down to performance. And the other guy's got even though it's a spring training ERA, but the other guy's getting hit around. And this kid goes out there and is going, 5 innings of one-hit baseball. I mean, we've seen it before, and I think there's some really good baseball people that are up top there with the Mets who kind of know what they're doing. And David Stearns has really changed the way that they look at baseball and what talent is.
One thing, just real quick, not really a question. I thought it was cool how you mentioned how everything is so analytical now. And growing up, I mean, one of the teams that I really fell in love with was the 04, 05, 06. Just in that 20-year stretch, you could see the change in technology. Because I remember being on TV, Carlos Delgado writing in his notebook, and I'm sure he was keeping information basically like we do today. It's incredible.
Yeah, no, his little black book was an outstanding piece of work. Like it should have been in a public library so that people could try and understand what a major league hitter does. And he was a very successful major league hitter because he kept a notebook, because he had notes on everybody. It's like being prepared for the test, right? You know what you're going to see the next day, but if you've already faced him before and hey, that last at bat that I had, 2-1 count, he threw me a changeup. I'm going to write that down, and then I'm going to sit on changeup the next time I got a 2-1 count. And he would do that, and he had success with it. And I mean, he taught Beltran as well, how to look for tells from pitchers. So I was saying, so guys like Beltran and Delgado, they're really like super smart baseball players who did it old school with their own little notes, their own little notebook. It's like a cheat sheet.
Right.
People would always talk about it, but it was like, why wouldn't you put down that information? Now it's all on a printout.
It's crazy, but I find that really cool how, guys like that, because we saw it only on TV, but you got to see it firsthand. It's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. And then we would try and take the book and hide it and mess with them.
What do you think of that? Did he like that too?
No. Oh no, you couldn't touch his book. Hitters don't like you touching their bats. There've been knives pulled out on people.
All right. So, Nelson, on April 11, 2008, at a 7:10 start at Shea Stadium, you made your first career start as the Met at Shea Stadium. Take us a little bit through that day. What was it like getting ready for that day? Your first start at Shea Stadium, and what was your family's thoughts on finally seeing their family member, their son, at Shea Stadium?
Yeah, I get called up the week before, make my Mets debut in Miami, pitched the 8th inning, scoreless, had a strikeout, came off the mound and had to cover my eyes as I walked into the dugout. And media asked me, why were you covering your eyes? And I said, I don't want anybody to see me crying in HD. And so it was a long time, a lot of work, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get back to that level. And then we had one more game. And then they said, hey, you're going to start when we get back home to New York against the Milwaukee Brewers. So I called my parents, of course, and I said, this is it. This is, I'm going to be pitching. I'm starting. Billy Wagner gave me access to his suite, and it held about 20 people, which equals about 50 Puerto Ricans. So they crowded up in there to watch from Wagner's suite in the right field corner. I had about 120 tickets that the team gave me to allow my friends and family. And I mean, there were so many people there that knew me and saw the journey. And, all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, he's playing for our team. And they were there. And I remember that day I woke up and had to have L&B's pizza before I went in. Had L&B's, went in, sat down and kind of tried to just let it all sink in and stay focused. had my Lose Yourself by Eminem as my song. Really just tried to be in a zone early and not act like I was overwhelmed. It was, let's put it this way. My very first game at the big league level, I got there the day before, and it was in Texas. It's a huge stadium, I walk out and I look at the guys taking batting practice with the Diamondbacks, and my mouth is wide open as I'm looking at the third deck of how big the stadium is. And Luis Gonzalez taps my chin. He's like, "Hey, kid, close your mouth. You're going to catch flies." So I always knew like I had to do the mental tricks to get myself prepared and focus on, all right, I know the lineup. I know how I want to attack this guy. I know what I want to try and go do the first time through the lineup. Let's see what happens after the first time, make adjustments. Went out there and carried a no-hitter after 4 innings. And, the crowd, I remember it was like foggy that night. The first time I got 2 strikes on a batter, started to get the slow clap.
You're right.
Everybody's waiting for the third strike, and I stepped off the mound, and I'm like, oh my God. So I go and throw the pitch, get a ground ball, third out or whatever, go into the dugout's cool. Next inning, I get 2 strikes. Here we go again. And then I got the strikeout, and everybody goes crazy. Upper deck is going nuts. Everybody's, I'm so excited about it. And for about 7 seconds of my lifetime, I knew what it was like to be Dwight Gooden.
That's incredible.
Walked around that mound, took it in, then got back on the mound. I said, all right, let's do it again. So pitched that game. We wound up winning. It was everything I could have imagined. It was almost like a movie. Like I said, it was the fog, and we win, and my family and friends, and I'm waving to the fans afterwards, and then do the press conference. And first thing I said was, it was so much fun. I want to do it again.
Incredible. I can't even imagine that feeling. So obviously the big fish this offseason was Juan Soto. Mets now have the owner that will go attack guys like this in free agency. So it's just being a fan like that, it's incredible to have that, and bringing back Pete and some of the other additions. Where do you see this team? Like, what's the limit on this team, so to speak?
Well, the limit's always going to be the pitching.
Right.
I think the lineup can compete with anybody's lineup. I think their defense up the middle is really, really good. Alvarez hurts. I mean, we've been yet to see a full season of Alvarez. We haven't seen the same Alvarez power like we saw last year, or his first year, I should say, 24 home runs. We're still looking for that guy to show up. It's always going to be about the pitching. And, Edwin Diaz needs to be more consistent. It's impossible to be the 2022 version. That was, less than, what was that, like a 1.2 ERA. He was just as dominant as could be. But I think we could get him around a 2 ERA and more consistent, even though I laugh because people are like, oh my God, he blew 6 saves last year. I was like, do you know that's 1 a month? That's 1 a month. And you're sitting here yelling about 6 saves he blew. I think, they did a nice job with Minter, Stanek back. I like the makeup of the bullpen. I think it's better than it was last year, just out the gate. I think a year of Diaz coming back and, his leg and shoulder and everything else that he dealt with, he's going to be back to top form. But I do think this lineup can compete with anybody. I think, we're going to learn a little bit more about Mendoza. We didn't know anything about Mendoza before last season. And as the season went on, we get to 11 games under 500, and all of a sudden they have a team meeting. And since that point, they were the best team in baseball. So that shows you like his managing style, how he expects the players to have accountability, puts the onus on them. And, he sits there in front of the media, and he's not a cliche man. I wouldn't say that. But at the same time, he says, it's very important to know that there are conversations and relationships that are being built on a daily basis. And there's a level of trust that he's learning to have with some people. And, there's other people that he's giving an opportunity to, like a Reed Garrett. And so, Garrett Reed, that you see what he's able to do. And he's a guy that nobody else was taking a chance on last year. And he became the closer for a little while, while Diaz was struggling. And so that gave him immense confidence. So that's another big piece moving forward in the bullpen. I think this team is going to compete. I just think, look at the division that they're in. The Phillies didn't get worse. The Braves didn't get worse. If anything, they're going to be better with Acuna back. So it's going to be a very tough division, but I do think it comes down to whether they're in first or second place. They are going to be a team that can go deep into the postseason. You know, I have to remind people, like, the Dodgers lost all 5 starters and won the World Series. You know, that happens to any other team. It's lost. Hope is lost. But we just saw a team do it. We just saw a team literally go running through the playoffs with 2 starters and a bullpen guy and a bullpen day, you know, as the third starter. And it worked. And it worked. I mean, if you think about it, like, it was an incredible job by Dave Roberts and even Aaron Boone for getting there with all the different things that the Yankees had to deal with, not having Cole and, you know, having to heal for the first half and then losing him. And then, you know, just Holmes not being a very good closer after the All-Star break, all those different things that they dealt with. And no production from first, no production from third. And yet they still made it. Juan Soto was a big factor, but I think
yeah, I'm not too upset that he's won't be factoring into their lineup this year.
Yeah. Oh, no. I don't know how many million times I've heard Mark Malusa say it, that, you know, they don't have Juan Soto to cover up for a lot of the things that were wrong with them. And it's funny because everybody else is like, oh, he's a 280 hitter. He's a terrible defender. He's this, he's that, he's the other thing. And I have to remind him that he's only 26. He's only 26 and he's getting better. He's working hard to fix his defense as much as he can. He's working hard to fix his base running to be, you know, a plus rather than a minus. And I think that's something that you love about the kid. Take the money out of it. This was just about the fact that the Mets could get a player in their prime to take blue and orange over pinstripes. And once they did that, the rest of baseball is up and taking notice because, yes, Steve Cohen has the pockets to buy all the players, but he doesn't want all the players. He wants his players. He wants players that fit in with this team, that will work with this team, and that, you know, there's a certain thing that finally, hopefully, they're building that culture. And it's not about OMG. It's not about Grimace. It's not about Seymour Wiener. You know, it's about playing a brand of baseball that was so exciting and so fun to watch that Yankee fans were taking notice. They were like, why is it like we're a Fortune 500 company and we're in the fourth quarter and we're not meeting our quota, you know, even though we're 30 games over 500. And then the Mets are out there just living the dream. They're having fun. They're smiling. They're laughing. They're celebrating every little win. And I said, yeah, especially the ones against the Yankees, because those were the most fun. You know, the Subway Series. That's where they kind of said, you know what? We are good enough. We just punched the bully in the mouth 2 games in a row. We took Garrett Cole deep how many times? Like, we are good enough.
A bunch.
And I think that was the belief right there that said the only team that can stop us is us. And they went out there and every little roadblock, they jumped over it. They leapfrogged it. The Braves, you know, they got to the Braves and were able to beat them in that series in Atlanta to make the playoffs. They go and, you know, punch the bully in the mouth with the Phillies and a grand slam, and Lindor still doesn't sit back and go, I did that, you know? He's like, we did that. If they didn't get on ahead of me, I don't have that moment. But I'm like, my God, like, just take onus of it, bro. Like, that was unbelievable. And then Pete hits the 3-run home run, you know, the other way with 2 strikes on him. Like, that's the stuff that dreams are made of. And I think that's where I fell in love with the Mets as a kid, because they played the game that way. There was that heart, soul, that passion, and they left it out there on the field. And win, lose, or draw, you knew the Mets were there that day.
So you brought up Lindor, who I think it's been incredible to see the change that this guy's made after his first year in New York. And it's, you know, New York better than anybody, how fast people are ready to write you off. And now it's transformed into, he's basically the captain. So we mentioned this on the last episode. Do you think it's kind of like the unwritten thing and they don't have to do it? Or do you think they should name him captain and put the name on it? Because he's been as good as almost anybody in recent history for the Mets.
If there wasn't a captain already, a captainship already in place, then you would say there's no need to do it. You know, he leads by example. We've seen that with guys on other teams before, right? But there is something to that C on the jersey. There is something, and it's not going to change the way he plays or the way he views himself or how he carries himself. I mean, this is a guy who in spring training last year, he put a hoop over his locker so that guys could play hoop, and he would challenge Jet Williams, and he would challenge all these kids to let's play some hoop. We're playing horse, and they're shooting around, from all over the clubhouse. Most of the guys of that caliber have their 3 lockers over in the corner, and they don't want to be bothered. They have their own space, and he's never been that guy. He has never been that guy. And so I think it's one thing, as I said about my career, right? You learn a lot from failure. You learn about who someone is from failure. And who was he? Even though he was failing, he was the guy on the top step with a smile on his face because Pete Alonso got the job done, hit the home run. No one could be happier for Pete Alonso's success than Lindor. There was never a jealous bone in his body. Like, he would come out of striking out against a nasty slider and turn around to the guy on deck and be like, hey,
Yeah.
this guy's slider is X, Y, and Z. And that next guy gets a hit. Like, there's value in that. And he's always been that guy. I think it's inevitable. I think they should do it because I think they were waiting. If Pete was going to sign that mega deal and he's in a homegrown, that's where you kind of feel that, maybe some tension. Then you look, of course, at they went out and signed Soto to a 15-year deal. He's going to be there after Lindor is done playing with the Mets. So I think, and even Soto has said it. Soto has said it's his team. Like, I'm a Met as well, but you can't look at the Mets and not say it's Lindor's team. He's just a leader. He goes to the mound the way that Keith Hernandez used to do it and get the best out of the pitcher, tell him focus up, make a pitch. And, he's that guy. He knows who to pat on the back. He knows who to kick in the ass. And as a manager and a front office staff, there's nothing better for you than to be able to say, hey, I know he'll take care of it. We don't have to, we don't have to worry about if he's going to address it or that whatever happens, like the glove throwing in the stands, if that's ever going to be addressed. Lindor is going to address that.
That's awesome.
Okay, there we go. That we wanted to ask you before we wrap up. Being from Brooklyn, being from Coney Island, and Vinny and I always go and watch Brooklyn Cyclones games. We're big fans of the Brooklyn Cyclones and everything that they do. What is your go-to Nathan's order?
I mean, Nathan's hot dog is where it's at. And it's funny because I do the hot dog and the crinkle fries, of course. But my mom and dad, on Fridays, my mom would go heavy on the shrimp platter. She loved the good shrimp platter, and I remember when I was a kid, I would get 1 or 2 and be like, it's okay. The tartar sauce and everything else. And now it's like, I got to do a little bit of everything, because I don't have access to it like I did when I used to live just, 8 blocks away. So when I go there, it's like, I got to have a bite of this and all those memories come back, a little bite of that and all those memories come back. So I think, I tell people all the time when it comes to hot dogs, I go, unless you've had a Nathan's hot dog, you don't understand.
That's really awesome. So, Nelson, thank you so much for this. We really appreciate it. Like I said, I know we're a very new podcast, but we love the Mets just like everybody else. And having you on is truly an honor. We wanted to give you an opportunity to let everybody know what you guys have going on from your side of things. If you would like to plug any of your situations, please, the camera's yours, and we'll just sit back and listen.
No problem. Thank you guys very much. This is always fun to take trips down, back through memory lane. And sometimes you learn some new things about yourself as these thoughts come back up. So, first and foremost, thank you to everybody. It's been a tremendous playing career that's parlayed into a broadcasting career. And, from my days at SNY to MLB Network to where I'm at now at Pix. Myself and Mark Malusis do a nightly sports show here on Pix 11 called Sports Nation Nightly. You can check it out where we talk all New York sports. We're very passionate. We're New Yorkers, so we thick skins. So we like the interaction with the fans online. We can dish it and take it, so be prepared. And, I really would like to say that the game of baseball is in good hands. Everybody's always worried about all this money and all this stuff. Watching these guys down at spring training and the way that they smile, just being around the game of baseball, being around each other, that's what you look for. You look for that chemistry. The old adage is, does chemistry breed winning or does winning breed chemistry? And the answer is yes, right? So you can't be a losing team and have a lot of smiles out there. But at the same time, I think when you are building something and they have a chance to build something special, as Soto has said, He's looking to hopefully build a dynasty here. And at the same time, he wants to make New York a Mets town. And the only way that they can do that is by winning. So let's see how it goes.
Absolutely.
That's
Again,
great.
thank you so much, Nelson. I really appreciate you
God
doing
bless.
this with us.
My pleasure.
And hopefully we will talk soon.
All right, Vin. I'll see you and Lou later on.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Take it easy.
So, guys, that is episode 6 of the Shea podcast. Thank you so much to Nelson Figueroa. That was an awesome interview. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in live on Instagram. We want to thank you guys as well. Please make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube on the Shea podcast. And like always, guys, let's go Mets. Have a good night.